Picture this. One of the most famous teachers in history gets called out publicly by one of his own students, called a fraud. This actually happened about 2,500 years ago. And today, we're going to decode the Buddha's incredible response to that public takedown, a teaching known as the lion's roar. Let's get into what it really means.
All right, so let's set the scene. This whole thing doesn't start with a peaceful meditation. Nope. It kicks off with some serious drama, a public betrayal that becomes the trigger for this entire teaching.
So, in front of a big crowd, a former student named Sunakkhatta stands up and makes this pretty heavy accusation. Now, this is the original Pali, the language they spoke back then. I know, it's a mouthful, but what on earth is he actually trying to say?
Okay, so what that really boils down to is this. He's claiming the Buddha is all talk and no action. He's saying, hey, there are no real superpowers here, no divine insight. This guy is just really, really good at logic. He just thought his way into this whole system. And you have to get this. This wasn't some quiet disagreement in a back room. This was a full-on public challenge. He was questioning the Buddha's authenticity, his enlightenment, everything. Which, of course, raised the huge question, was Sunakkhatta right? Was this whole thing just a very clever philosophy?
So, to really get the Buddha's response, we can't just read a simple translation. We need a way in. We need to unlock the ancient code of this text to see what's really going on.
So, how in the world do we do that? I mean, we're talking about a 2,500-year gap in time and culture. How can we possibly understand what was really being said and why it landed with so much power? Well, as it turns out, we've got a method.
We're going to use this really cool three-step process. First, we get the modern word. That's our direct, what does the dictionary say translation. Then, we dig down to the ancient root, where we get into the original language to find the intention behind the words from back then. And finally, my favorite part, we create the visual story, using a powerful modern metaphor to bridge that time gap and make it all just click.
All right, let's put our method to the test. And we'll start with the title of the teaching itself, the lion's roar.
So, check this out. The modern word for Mahāsīhanādasutta is pretty much what you'd guess, a lion's roar, a bold statement. But when we get to the ancient root, something much deeper is revealed. It's not about being aggressive or loud. It's about a sound so profoundly true that it makes all the other noise, all the doubt, all the fear just completely fade away.
And here's our visual translation. Think of it as moving from just a bunch of chaotic noise to pure, simple truth. The lion's roar isn't a boast. It's like a crystal-clear broadcast of clarity that cuts right through all the static of confusion. It's the sound of truth itself.
So the Buddha doesn't just fire back with, "No, you're wrong." He does something way more interesting. He lays out a huge map of reality. He explains that he can see all the different paths and destinations that are open to us, all based on our action.
And when he describes the path to, say, a heavenly realm, he uses this powerful simile. He compares the destination to a passado. So, you know what we have to do? Let's decode that word.
The modern word, the simple translation, gives us the image of a palace. And that sounds nice, right? You imagine someone just relaxing in a big, fancy building. But if we stop there, we miss the entire point. Because the visual translation reveals the key. It's not about a physical place, it's about a feeling. The palace is a metaphor for an internal state. It's that feeling of complete and total security, of being perfectly sheltered from all the storms of life. He's talking about a state of mind, not a piece of real estate.
And this brings us right back to Sunakkhatta's original jab. If the Buddha's power isn't about levitating or doing magic tricks, then what is it? Well, the Buddha actually answers that question directly.
In his response, he lists out 10 specific powers. But as you can see, these aren't what we usually think of as superpowers. It's not about flying or reading minds. They are all powers of deep, penetrating knowledge. It's about knowing the incredibly complex web of cause and effect, knowing the real results of our actions, and knowing the deep-down nature of beings. It's all about a radical understanding of how reality actually works.
So, he goes through 9 of these incredible powers of understanding, but what's the 10th one? What's the final ultimate power that fuels everything else and gives him the confidence to make that lion's roar?
And here we have it, the 10th power, Asavanam Kaya. The technical translation is the destruction of the taints, which sounds a bit
clinical, but the visual translation brings it to life. It's the power of wiping your mind screen completely clean of all the toxic gunk, all the biases, the knee-jerk reactions, the mental static that smudges and distorts how you see everything.
And that, right there, is the real superpower. It's not some kind of mystical, out-of-reach magic. It's a state of perfect mental clarity, a mind that sees reality exactly as it is, without any filters. And the most important part? This clarity is attainable.
So this brings us full circle. The true lion's roar isn't a boast about his own personal power. It's the unshakable, totally confident declaration that this deep clarity of mind isn't just for him. It's a potential inside of every single one of us. And that is the ultimate, most powerful response to being called a fraud.
So this leaves us with just one last question to think about. If the ultimate superpower is a clear mind, then what are the biases, the fears, or the old habits that might be smudging the screen of your own?